How optimistic, Les, are you that one of these candidates, I think there's 13 major candidates around the world, will work?
Well, I think they will work. I think at least one will work, but I think that the timing seems awfully optimistic. I would have thought that it would be somewhere mid-2021. I would be very impressed if things were to happen sooner. Like you said, we are going to get some data soon. But I think the gating factor for all of these companies is going to be manufacturing, and that's no easy task.
And that's, Jeff, I think what they're trying to do, right, is obviously they're being optimistic about the odds, but they don't want to be caught off guard where, let's say we get a viable candidate sooner than later because of modern technology and the genius of the scientists working on it. We need to be ready to get it around the world, correct? We need to be ready for billions of people to get this.
We certainly do. And look, we should be aware of the tremendous progress we've made. We have probably more than 200 vaccine candidates in development now. We have 20 plus in clinical trials, which is unbelievable for 6 months since we sequenced and identified this virus. That's the good news. The bad news is we don't yet know whether they're going to work. And if one or two of them work, then there's going to be a huge burden on that manufacturer to produce billions of doses. So the sort of irony here is that every one of those 20-odd manufacturers who's in clinical trials is having to scale up simultaneously. So ultimately, we know that 19 or maybe 15 of them won't even need the factories that they're setting up.
Jeff, I'll stick with you on that. Of those candidates, there are more than I thought. Certainly, which one or ones are you the most optimistic about?
We have several different classes of vaccines advancing. There are companies such as Moderna, BioNTech, CureVac, you mentioned. They're bringing forward mRNAs, which are very short sequences of nucleic acids that induce the body to produce its own protein. So they're really at the forefront. Then we have manufacturers such as the AstraZeneca group producing a vaccine called ChAdOx1. Those are synthetic viruses, a little bit like gene therapy, where again, they're reducing the body to produce the protein by delivering it in a virus. And then there are the traditional manufacturers, companies like GlaxoSmithKline, Sanofi, to a certain extent also J&J and Pfizer. And they're using mostly more traditional approaches, producing proteins, inducing the response with the protein. So I think that there are 4 or 5 companies who are clearly in the lead, but I also think people should have relatively low expectations. This is going to be an iterative process. The first generation of vaccines, if we're lucky, will be pretty good, but we're going to need to improve them over time. And I think this is a 4 or 5 or 10-year journey, not a 1 or 2-year journey.
Oh, well, let's hope it's shorter. Unless it sounds like you would mirror that sentiment about the timeline from a purely investment perspective. Do you think that investors have maybe gotten ahead of themselves, overpriced some of these companies based on the hopes of a vaccine?
Well, I'll just reference what Jeff said is there are many of them, and as a commercial proposition, the best case is only 2 or 3 of them make it to market. So arguably there are probably 17 very overvalued vaccine makers right now. So yes, I do think there is a lot of money being thrown at the sector, and yes, most of them won't succeed. Now, the issue is which one, and we're all still waiting for data and then manufacturing and distribution. And it's going to be a while before we really see the dispersion of the 3 or 5.
Well, let me ask you a different question, Les, and I'll stick with you. We know the names like Moderna, they become trader favorites. I mean, they're moving up and down multiple percent a day whenever there's a sniff of something. Is there a company out there that you own that either A, has not gotten enough attention for its work on this topic, or B, we forget there's a lot of other health issues out there besides this, that there are great companies that are being left in the dust because they're simply not in the coronavirus headline?
Well, yes, healthcare, underneath the surface, healthcare has had a fantastic year so far. So almost a lot of the things we own have done quite well. Just referencing COVID, however, I would say we are more optimistic on the monoclonal antibodies as treatments as opposed to the vaccines. So you got companies like Regeneron and Vir and a number of other companies working on those products that we think are more likely to see success near term. And then I think medical devices are looking for a comeback, and we also own some of the managed care stocks as well. All left, because of lack of attention.
Yeah, and Jeff, I mean, we do focus on the vaccine, but the treatment side, the antibodies, may be more important in the near term. I know Les owns Regeneron. You've got a buy rating on Regeneron. Is that sort of your top pick right now?
I think we actually like Gilead a lot. And as you know, remdesivir has recently been approved. It's been now approved in Europe. We understand that Gilead is actually going to be out of stock of remdesivir in the third quarter. They'll probably be out of stock in the fourth quarter. And what that actually means in revenue is that in the first quarter of commercial sales, they could sell $1 billion of product at the price they recently announced. And I think people will be happy to pay it. When you see that sort of large number, it tends to get priced in to at least to a certain extent to future revenue. So we think there's a lot of upside for Gilead. If the stock hasn't performed nearly as well as Regeneron has, and indeed we like Regeneron, but it's had a lot of value already added for these antibodies.